If you asked me last year, like, is this even possible? I would have told you 100% no. But in the last 4 to 6 months, we've had a few key technologies that have come along that have allowed us to be AI to actually solve an architectural design problem.
We've got a really exciting episode for you with Patrick Chopson, co-founder of Cove Architecture. In our conversation, Patrick breaks down how AI made his firm faster and more cost-effective than traditional architectural practices, what skill sets he looks for when hiring for a tech-enabled architecture firm, and why long-term architectural professionals are flocking to his team. Whether you're a 30-year veteran or a student coming straight out of school, you're going to get real value from Patrick's insights on AI and the architectural practice. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Buildings 2.0. Today I'm joined with a very special guest, Patrick Chopson, co-founder, chief product officer at Cove Architecture. Thanks for chatting.
Nice to talk to you.
Patrick, let's dive in. So I got really excited. Recently, you made a pretty big announcement about Cove Architecture, its transition from building tooling to providing services. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So Cove Architecture is a full services architecture firm, but we use AI to help us deliver those architectural services. So we like to say it's like AI powered, but human centered. The idea being that we need to switch from maybe more of a generative thought process to a collaborative thought process where we're collaborating with a computer to design something is the main idea.
Why now?
Yeah. So honestly, if you asked me last year, like, is this even possible? I would have told you 100% no. But in the last 4 to 6 months, we've had a few key technologies that have come along that have allowed us to be able to actually use AI to actually solve an architectural design problem.
AI is on everybody's mind, but it's a bit of a baggage to unpack. Folks are either really excited or really scared. Like, how should they navigate? And as you're positioning Cove Architecture and your team, does it change the people that you're servicing? Is it the same and you're just approaching it differently? Help me unpack what this means.
Yeah, I mean, for when we think about the developers or people who are building buildings, they just want to get their drawings on time. They want to have them fully resolved, and they want to have good design excellence, obviously. That's what they're paying for. But then at the same time, they just want to make sure that all the pro forma works out and the numbers work. And so I think that's something that a lot of architects forget is that we think about the way we design things, but the developer doesn't really see the value being created the same way that an architect does. We think about it from a design perspective. They're thinking about it from a dollars and cents perspective. And so they just want to know, can you deliver? And I think a lot of times nowadays, because the profession is going through a lot of changes with a lot of people retiring and people who haven't been in the driver's seat before are now driving the projects, they're kind of struggling sometimes to deliver on time. So we see a lot of on-time delivery has really dropped for architects over the last couple of years. And so a lot of developers are asking themselves hey, I've worked with firm X for the last 20 years, but I'm not so much in love with the most current person who's servicing me because Dave or whoever that I originally developed this relationship is now retired. So it's I'm open to not looking for another architect who can take care of me better.
But unpack that for me. So what does AI have to do with this? You mentioned, for example, on-time delivery. I suspect you're suggesting that it just helps us move faster, but in what sense?
Yeah. So in the initial stages, when you're doing a feasibility study, there's a lot of information that you need to assemble together. And there's a lot of insights that maybe you could have because you're an architect and you have the dimensional information. But then, a lot of developers are paying for a market study that could help them understand, but you have all the data to actually make that market study better. So we can actually build tools that help us do that feasibility study better. Then as we think about each step in the process, there are distinct phases where if we get something wrong, it causes us to have to redo our work as architects. So every design revision for a reasonable size firm costs about $30,000 per major design revision. And that could happen because we didn't get the code right. We didn't understand the zoning. So we actually have bots that actually help us read all the zoning, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, fire codes, building codes, and all those things and kind of figure out where are the opportunities for one, to make this project better. But number two, how can we, make sure we're not doing as many revisions. And then it's because we can also track the cost in real time and the embodied carbon in real time with our new tools that we built. We can actually say, like, when we get to the point where we're delivering the project for final CDs and it goes out to the contractor, we're not gonna be 20% off and then have to redesign the project all over again. So those are the things that drive, a lack of profitability and make us have to work on Christmas and things like that.
Do you imagine a world where, as architects, we are doing more than what we're typically doing now?
Yeah, but I think we're doing more of something different, which is right now we spend a lot of time assembling information together and less time designing. This leads to lower design excellence on most projects because we simply don't have time in the fee to properly explore an alternative facade scheme that could make it look more cool, but might not cost more. So and then we have to go with whatever we've done the last 10 projects that's cheap or something that the developer says, do this because you can't keep screwing around. I need it now, and so we kind of end up missing a lot of the opportunities. And that's where, so I think more design iteration is where we'll spend more time, but we'll also do less in the sense that we'll go home on time, which I think is pretty important too. Work life balance.
On this note, sir, I was actually scrolling through Twitter recently, and I think his handle is literally called Strip Mall Guy. I don't know if you saw this tweet, but he
Yeah.
essentially was talking about how he buys strip malls, and it was pretty transformative. That one of the most frustrating parts of working with an architect is this kind of early concept design because he's wasting like tens of thousands of dollars, a lot of time just to arrive at like a concept, let alone actually start the design development process. And of course, he was suggesting like, hey, I could take a photo of the strip mall, run it through ChatGPT, get a few, iterations. Obviously, the detail is going to be a little rough, but at least enough to kind of skip past 2, 3, 4 months of just back and forth on concept and a few $1,000s. And, he went as far as to say, like, that, because I'm a financial fiduciary of my investors, like, I would be wrong for not using this kind of thing.
Yeah.
How so then it poses like an existential question. I'm not suggesting architects are only concept designers. There's a whole bunch of other things, but
Yeah.
if it if it gets to be that no-brainer, then like where is the value accruing for an architect? And like how is it shifting? Is it downstream? Is it upstream? Like more design development? How
Yeah. I think there'll always be like people who are going to like use the tools and are going to be confident in the output of them and who may be coming to it from outside the profession. I think there'll be a developer here or there who like wants to make his own concept renderings. Fine. But at the end of the day, what you're paying for is design excellence and also like the liability that you cover as an architect. And like that's something that a lot of people who are, running the spreadsheet for development, they're not really interested in being artistic and like trying to make something that looks good. And yeah, maybe there'll be a few that will, but like at the end of the day, you still want a professional person to like check it. And that's honestly why we switched from selling software to doing services, is that even though we made the world's easiest to use sustainability software, the Cove tool that everyone may know us for, that particular product, we worked with over 350 different firms were our customers over various times. Every single one of those customers, no matter big, small, large, West Coast, left coast, Canada, Mexico, UK, whatever, they all struggled on implementation. And after about 3 years, they were like, we literally just can't learn how to judge the results. So even though they could learn how to use the software, it was hard for them to know like if the answer was correct because there's millions of dollars of decisions. As an architect, I'm taking my liability if I'm running an energy model or a daylight model or whatever simulation I'm running. If I can't have responsible control of the outputs and understand how I got there, I really can't use that tool. And so that's what holds back a lot of AEC tools, is that the architect simply can't validate the assumptions behind it. And I think that is the reason why software does not work very well in our space. It has to be services. So really what they say, AI verticalized services is the new thing, really is a way for you to use technology to deliver services at the same margin that you supply software at, which is around 70 to 80%. And that's what we've seen from our experience, which is bonkers. Because, like most of the time when people are supplying architectural services, even the best firms, it's like 25%, maybe in some rare cases, like I'm sure Gensler or somebody like that, they can go a little higher, but it's not much higher.
how do you think about pricing and how that's evolved? So you in your particular case is really fascinating, right? Your background in architecture, you moved into selling software and you're going into selling services. Do you think about it as kind of the kind of hourly basis have because
Hmm.
of AI? as of the process, do things shift there? How do you think about capturing value there?
Yeah, it kind of changes, I guess, based on where you are in the country. Some places, obviously, people like to see hourly breakdowns. Other parts of the country, they want to see lump sums, and different billing types are different as well. Sometimes it's a percentage of cost of construction, and sometimes not. So, like, one of the things I've found having selling services now to such a wide geographic area very quickly, and is that you have to develop a model that works for those different things. But really, people don't want to pay less. That's not a thing. What they want, because if you pay less, then you don't get what you need from a liability perspective, that's scary. So the real thing they want to do is like, can I be confident that you're going to give me the best design that's the most compliant, that maximizes my site and the best and highest use? And that's what they're paying for. And so most people don't want it super, super fast, but like maybe if you could be on time, they're like, that would be great. If it's 20% faster, I'm also okay with that. But if it's 10% at the same time, now I have concerns. I don't want to like, I'm really worried about that. So it's like the proper professional care and review. I think that is like what most people want.
I guess maybe transitioning to like you've transitioned a company from building tools to now providing tech-enabled services. Has that shifted your view in how you manage, how you hire, what kinds of skills you look for? Or has it quite literally been like almost either expanding the knowledge of existing team members and moving into how have you managed that transition?
Yeah. And right now I'm just hiring the best designers. That's honestly what I'm focused on, like the best principals. Like, for example, there was a tower project we were looking at recently. So now I have like couple principals that do towers I'm talking to like bring them onto our team, and make sure that they're the ones who can kind of manage that project more, because we have different building types that we're doing. So we have different principals for each one. So I'm hiring different principals for different roles, and then just assembling the best project architects, best project managers. And that's interesting to like go from a totally tech company to now I need to bring in this whole other group of people who are really artists. And like, they're like, show me what to do, but I just want to design more things. And and like their concern when you're hiring someone who's like a top principal, which I think we'll be able to announce some really cool people soon, is that it is about the money a little bit when you're hiring somebody, but what they want to know the most is, do you have the ability to practice the highest design excellence here? And if you can like show them how you're going to do that or how we are doing that, they get really excited because that's what motivates. If you've worked your butt off for the last like 30 years getting to the pinnacle of the profession, like you don't want to go somewhere where you're going to design like something boring. And so
Yeah.
that's been really cool. And like projects are now coming to us from all over the country, that because a lot of developers are like, hey, I do need something better. So they're actually reaching out to us as well. So you kind of get like, really great principles and really great projects all coming together. I'm honestly kind of excited to see how the kind of really amazing work that we're going to be able to do. Because, like if we're not spending so much time doing silly things like zoning analysis, and we've actually established, hey, we can build this much, we can spend more time making it look cool.
Yeah, yeah. I get really excited about just the way that you're thinking about company and firm building. Like, what are some of those pillars that you've instituted to convince the best of the best to like come to your team? I've had the opportunity to like talk to some really incredible folks like across really incredible design firms, and what I've noticed is that each in their own right has unique perspectives. But I will say at the end of the day, most design firms are still kind of run pretty traditionally.
Yeah.
How do you think about like instituting things in the operations to make sure that you really are the kind of new generation of a firm? Like what are those things what are the boundaries
Yeah.
to?
I think the biggest problem is that a lot of firms are running an old school way because they have partners that control the money of that firm and how they make their money. So it's like not not that you can be old and you can be good and it's not really about that. It's not about like people wanting to like hold things back. That's not the most people who like graduated in the 1970s are like honestly a little bit more experimental when it comes to just about everything. So like I like working with those people. But the problem for them is that a lot of the firms that they're in are constructed based on a partnership model where every partner shares the profit. So, like, if you're gonna change something, you gotta convince all these stakeholders to all give up a part of their profit to, like, invest in something or change something, and that just doesn't work. Some firms are also, like, multi-office. They've been assembled by acquisition because 'cause we've had a lot of private equity money that came in over the last couple decades and has built these mega firms. But that means that these are all distinct firms that operate in this loose confederacy, you could say. And so they don't have the ability to make changes very easily because of the politics of like, well, if someone so in such office doesn't want to do something, we can't make them do it because contractually we can't. So it's like the firms themselves are set up in such a way that it makes it almost impossible to like innovate. So the difference when I'm selling someone to come work with us is like, hey, the foxes are not in the hen house here. Like the technology people are in charge. And so like you're going to get if you said I used Grasshopper on the last 10 tower projects I did, and I was only able to use it for my team. But here we're actually have like a full AI, 3D modeling engine that we built ourselves. And you can be a participant in the realization of that technology that will become because we have a full software team of 10 people. They're always building stuff and they're using AI to build stuff too. So they're making vast progress all the time on making something that's truly like the architecture machine from like the Nicholas Negroponte kind of vision from the 1970s where you just talk to a computer and it helps you design, that kind of thing.
Talk to me a little bit more about that. So there's different ways to leverage AI. There's kind of the generative component. There's the let's scrape everything and I don't know, kind of structure this information, make sense of it. Where as and as an architect, I'm trying to understand through traditional lenses of concept, SD, DD, CD. Even early, even pre-design, you got to, as you mentioned, get the zoning information. Is there a phase within that traditional workflow that's going to be impacted the most?
Mm. Yeah, I think like really it has to be like the whole thing, but you have to build it up in pieces. So like for example, I have an AI agent I was working on yesterday myself because I can code a little bit. And like this was all about like ADA bathrooms, which I know is like a terrible topic, but like basically I need to be able to interpret the ADA code, have like reasonable templates for different sizes of ADA bathrooms and different configurations, and then interpret the intent from the person when they type in, I want to like draw an office building. I need to go all the way down sometimes to just like work the position of a toilet and work my way out from that detail. So like that intent, I need to interpret the intent. I need to go down to like the core level of like where are all the defaults for these things and then the positions. And then I need to use that to build a bathroom and then I put it into the agent that builds the floor plan. And all those agents are working together to build like a floor plan. Then I have a floor plan which then I can send to the agent that's assembling the building. And then another one's evaluating the facade. And then they all are kind of like working together in an agentic kind of fashion to make something that then an architect can view a fully resolved building and say whether or not they like it, don't like it, click on things, change this, don't change that. Similar to like basically cursor for architecture is kind of like what we're currently have been working on to help enable our teams to hit those much higher gross margins of software and go home on time.
I'm just trying to make sense of what this all means. I guess we're really in the thick of it, and perhaps even in the first inning. But um, there just seems to be so many implications on everything.
Yeah.
I guess I consider you to be a kind of a bit of a historian of the profession and understanding kind of the different decades, and from a focus on performance to focus on kind of the conceptual and whatnot. Like, where, I guess I'm asking you a little bit to kind of think into the future and look back, but what is this decade or two going to be remembered as? I mean,
Yeah. I
I'll
mean,
what
I
is it?
think we'll look back and we'll be like, this is the moment where like 2025 was the year that AI joined the profession as like a participant in it. And like that has profound changes. It's really similar to like 1920s, like Corbu era, where like they had this idea of, hey, we can have this new structural system. We can think about making buildings in this totally different way and conceiving of cities even in a totally different way. I think obviously there's good things about that. There's bad things about that. There's things that we learned, things that but it did shape the way buildings look in a very profoundly different way than what we were used to before that. And this technology is just as transformative as like the international style built on the pilotes and like, concrete deck idea. Like there's a big change. Curtain walls, something no one had ever thought of. AI is going to think of things to change on our designs and show us opportunities that we would never have imagined before, or we'll be able to just make stuff just generally look beautiful. And I think like if everything's beautiful, I think like that, and every single building reflects the exact design intent of that architect, that would be a much more interesting world than today, where we a lot of times we see the bias of Revit creating Revit buildings. Like we want to have like a tool that's not super biased towards that. Obviously, I have my own bias that I do put into the tool. Like I like the pattern language, so when I'm adding the rules for design, I'll definitely add like things like if the user doesn't specify, put windows so that I have light from two sides in a room. Like that's a principle I'll always put into any design. So obviously I'll put that into the code and so the AI will think about that. But so it's kind of like he who makes it does
Yeah.
help guide the profession as a whole. So there's a lot of responsibility there.
For someone just coming out of school right now and trying to make sense of this, both just the art of architecture as well as just like the business, what would you advise me not to do?
Yeah, I would say like don't stick your head in the sand and not engage with AI tools, because like the more you engage with those things on a daily basis, the more likely you are to be less afraid and more like, yeah, like this is just another tool that I need to like add to my tool chest. And you'll also start to wonder why it is that your firm is banning certain things, because most firms have banned AI. The reason for it, like at first I was like, why would you do that? But then I remembered, wait, responsible control. That is like the number one liability is everything that is wrong with our profession in many ways, things that are right about it. But like you got to think about like, how do I validate this? So if your firm is not able to explore technology to the extent that they can validate the outputs, then they can't use it. And so like that. So when I'm looking at people coming out of school, I look at the guys coming out of Casey Rim's program at SciArc, which I've hired a couple kids from there. And that program, they really make people think about AI and like actually build tools themselves using coding agents so that they're actually exploring the process of making a tool. And I think like that is like really where I would advise someone like focus on how to build stuff. Because if you don't understand it, then how can you be a leader and how can you engage in this new direction?
What maybe just to talk shop for a little bit, maybe 10 years ago we were talking Rhino, maybe Revit, etc. What should we be talking about now? Are we still talking about?
I mean, because we're building this software for ourselves, we probably won't sell our AI BIM software that we've been making. So I think most people will, maybe they'll have to do something, I don't know, or maybe Autodesk will come out with something that helps. But I do think that if you're building your own tools, because right now the barrier to making software is dropping rapidly, yeah, it keeps advancing. Like you can build stuff now like in one shot, you can describe exactly a piece of software you want. Like for example, I did a demo recently where I built a AIA 2030 reporting dashboard for a firm in one prompt and during a webinar. Like that's the kind of stuff you can do now. So I really don't know what software will come. I think every firm will eventually have its own that is built upon its knowledge, like the knowledge of its principles. And, these guys that are retiring, it would be a good idea to retain their knowledge before it's lost.
I think with so much change, I think I've asked you this perhaps on the first, but I guess maybe I'll ask again. But amidst all the change, what do you think in 5 or 10 years is not going to change? So all of our tooling, think about the process. Probably the process itself of SD, DD, CD is probably quickly evolving. But what do you think is not going to change
Mm.
based off what you see now?
Yeah, I think design excellence won't change. Making a set of drawings that you still send to someone on paper, I don't think that'll change, unfortunately. But, we've been doing construction drawings the same way since the ancient Egyptians were building their pyramids, and we got like the carvings to prove it. people were making drawings since back in the day. I don't think that'll change. But what I do think is like the like we've been in this downward spiral as a profession for the last like 20 years where no one has an ideology. There's nothing new coming. We're working more. Everyone's overworked. There's not enough time. Like it just feels like everything's a complaint, and every new thing that comes along is just like another tool, nail in the coffin of like I don't have enough time, like embodied carbon, energy, daylight, sustainability, like everything is just like another thing for me to think about. Like, and I think we're gonna emerge on the other side of this is like now I'm focused on the design. The things I went to school for, the parts of architecture I love, the passion of making form that's beautiful and engaging. I think that will re-emerge as the reason that we're waking up every morning to go into the office. And I think we'll still continue to go in the office too. I don't think that'll change, but maybe more hybrid situations will become likely. But that's what I see.
This has been fun.
This is cool. Yeah, I'm always excited to talk to you.